Hello again, it is still the 1st of April 2023. I'm still here with my fellow autistic Simon, and this is part 3.
Part 3.
Yes, you were saying?
Yes, I was just saying, I think there's a lot more information available, I think, for people nowadays than there ever used to be.
Not the internet, isn't it?
Yeah, but one thing I sort of found quite interesting when I was sort of doing my research was I did sort of listen to quite a lot of videos and podcasts and things. And it's interesting that I sort of found, particularly sort of during the kind of lockdown period where people were sort of feeling quite isolated anyway, I would sort of hear stories from sort of people who, you know, even if they were within the UK, they were sort of like, you know, hundreds of miles away from where I lived. I was, you know, very unlikely to ever meet them in person. And yet it was very interesting to sort of note some of the commonalities, some of the things we sort of had in common. Although there is sort of a lot of you know, diversity, as we were saying before, also there are a lot of things in common. And I think you know, people's experience of sort of trying to struggle in sort of day-to-day life, you know, trying to deal with rooms that are too bright or too noisy, or you know, trying to sort of second guess what other people are sort of meaning. I think these are things which
walking on tiptoes.
Yeah, walking on tiptoes is a very good one. I mean,
patting people on the head.
Yeah, we were saying about this before, weren't we? And
yeah, we've both gone through patting people on the head.
Patting people on the head, yeah.
It's one of those weirdly specific things that you know, you find other autistics do.
Yeah.
And, it's not that weird. It's just an autistic thing. It's perfectly normal thing to do if you're one of us.
Yeah, in a job that I used to do, there was we once had somebody that was happy with something that we'd done, and this person basically hugged me, and they were quite a lot shorter than me, so I'm being hugged by somebody who's not quite half my size, but you know, quite shorter, and I sort of did this awkward kind of pat on. And
we've all done it.
Yeah, and when I've related this story to one or two people over the years, they've kind of gone, "God, that's so patronising." And at the time, I remember thinking, well, I didn't think it was at all, you know, being patronising. It just seemed to be the thing to do, you know.
Why do they put your head there?
I know.
If you don't want to get patted on it.
I know.
Put some platform shoes on.
I know, it was very, very strange. Or, you know, the physical contact thing, I think is particularly something I think a lot of us struggle with, because we were sort of saying before about nightclubs being sort of overwhelming experiences. I mean, I've had it before now where let's say I've been out by myself in a shopping place or something, and I just want to get in and do whatever, and there's a lift, and I get in the lift and I press the button, and suddenly, out of nowhere, 3 or 4 people suddenly run in, and there's nothing I can do. I'm at the back of the lift, and you're all kind of jostled up against each other, and you're thinking, "Oh my goodness, this is awful. Please let it be over soon." You know, just as an example.
Does anybody have fleas?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I know when I was at school, one of the things that I hated more than anything else was rugby. I absolutely detested it. Apart from the fact that I couldn't kind of understand the rules or anything else, just the act of having to have your arms around people and having to have their, you know, like when you're putting your head in this scrum or whatever it was, I just remember thinking, "Ooh, no," you know, even if nothing happens, you don't get kicked in the face or something. I remember thinking, "Oh, this is terrible," you know.
Can we please not hug each other so much?
Yeah, it's quite.
You all smell.
Yeah. I mean, it's strange.
I don't want your weird hands on me.
It's strange actually, because I actually am not too bad, generally speaking, on sort of smells and things. That's actually something that I'm okay on. But going back to the sort of the sensory sort of thing, one thing I have noticed recently, I never appreciated how photosensitive I am. When we used to go on holidays when I was a child, if we went somewhere that was quite sunny, I would always have sunglasses stapled to my face practically whilst I was in the pool. Nobody else seemed to have sunglasses in the pool, but I did, because I just couldn't tolerate it.
Other people can look at the sky.
Yes, yeah, and unless it's a dark, overcast day, it just can't. It's too much. I have noticed actually on a sunny day that when I go across roads and things, I always seem to involuntarily close my left eye, not my right one. It's always a left one. I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
But it's as though the brain has already made a decision. No, too much light. Go away, go away.
On the left.
Yeah, and it's always on the left. But have you seen Gremlins?
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody that I used to work with years ago always used to joke that whenever I used to sort of pull the blinds down at work, I'd always have them as low as I could. She'd always go, bright lights, you know, like Gizmo does in the sort of film, you know. I'm going, you know, like I'm some sort of vampire or something, and you know. I'm sure you could make a Venn diagram actually about autistics and vampires and sort of aversion to sunlight or something, or being overstimulated. You know, there's some link there somewhere.
My mum's always complaining actually about how dark my house is.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it could be because particularly during sort of summery sort of periods where it's It, do you know, it's actually quite interesting. But if you think about it, one of the things about sunlight and this sort of sensory stuff, it's going back to what we were saying before about it being presented as being fun, because if you think about it, like what's the stereotypical thing that people always want to do? They want to go on holiday, don't they? Where do they want to go on holiday? Somewhere sunny and exotic. I during the lockdown, I actually took to cutting my own hair basically with trimmers, which fortunately my hair's like a fair Brillo pad anyway, so it's fairly easy to do. But every time I used to go to like hairdressers or something, what's the first? Have you gone anywhere on your holidays? The stereotypical kind of question, yeah. And what they want you to do is basically go, oh yes, I'm off to Magaluf for something, and I'm going for 2 weeks, and I can't wait, and this is.
I'm going to get burnt to a crisp.
Yes, but this kind of thing, it's so sort of rife in our culture. This idea that this is what we all want to do. We all want to go off and sort of frizzle ourselves to nothing, kind of.
Or
thing.
Even if you don't go away, just to get yourself frizzled.
Yeah. We want to go on some tanning bed or something.
Yeah.
And
let's all turn hot pink. We'll look beautiful.
Exactly. And even products that people can buy to sort of simulate that, it's almost as though we kind of on some weird level equate being burned to a crisp with having a really great time. So if obviously not all people on the spectrum necessarily have this, but it's a very common sort of thing. And if you want to kind of sort of sequester yourself away from this and do other things, it's almost sort of seen as kind of
and not burn.
Yeah, what's the matter with you? Are you depressed or something? It's like, no, I'll be depressed if I go out there.
And the whole thing about it's lovely weather today, isn't it? And no, it's 28 centigrade. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
I want to die.
Yeah.
But maybe not literally.
Yeah. Well, one of the problems that
I want to lie down somewhere cold.
One of the problems I actually face with this is that it just so happens that my birthday happens to fall in the summer months, and I don't like summer. So unless it's a fairly temperate summer, I'm not keen on birthdays anyway, to be honest. But like my partner, bless her, is always sort of trying to kind of like get me to sort of celebrate, and we'll go away and so on. And
that's somewhere we do. I get really overexcited about birthdays.
Do you?
Even though I never make any plans or know what I want or anything. Oh, my birthday! It's March, it's my month.
Yeah, whereas in my case, by the time we get to August, it's like, go away, leave me alone.
Oh, it's September, it's my half birthday.
I mean, it basically, as far as I'm concerned, it has one function, which is it's possible I might end up with a bit more disposable money, so I can go and waste it on waste.
That's a bonus.
Yeah. By waste, by the way, I mean spend sensibly, of course, on valuable things such as toys, Lego, books, whatever, music and things. But no, just going back to the whole sort of sensory sort of thing. I mean, something that I've actually toyed with the idea of, and I've never actually done, but I personally would love to go to one of these sort of sensory room things that they have, where they...
A snooze them.
Yeah. I never have, but I know you can sort of go. But when I've mentioned...
They're very good.
When I've mentioned this to other people, they've actually gone, Oh God, that sounds absolutely terrible. Have you been to?
Really?
Yeah, have you been to one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it really good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine
I
actually.
remember when I was in year 6. So I'd be 11. We went to a school trip to the hospital, and they
Okay.
were showing us around the children's ward and everything. And they had a snoozling room,
Oh
and
wow.
we all went in, and they said, did you know that autistic children like these? I thought, well, I like it. Wow, there's a pink bubbly thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic! I want one of these. I want one of these in my bedroom. Yeah. Yeah, and I thought, well, I think these autistic kids are onto something.
Yeah. How ironic. Yeah, but you particularly with the sort of this kind of sensory stuff that you kind of see, where you have all these wonderful tubes and things with
Yes.
sort of, and you kind of think, wow, if I had a room,
Fibre optic lamps.
fibre optic, I think if I had a room where you had things like I'd never come out.
No. Why would you?
No, nothing would ever happen. I'd never get anything done.
No.
I used to have a lava lamp actually when I was a kid, but the trouble with those was they took such a long time to kind of get going.
And you sort of forget it's on.
Yeah, and that's the problem. So if there's a period of the day where you'd actually really kind of benefit from having this on and you'd find it really relaxing, you have to kind of almost anticipate in advance. Like, I think I'll probably be quite stressed in 2 hours. I'll put my lava lamp on now, and then when I'm stressed in 2 hours, I can have my lava lamp on and it'll be great.
I remember I went to stay with my auntie and uncle in Scotland when I was a kid, and they had this lava lamp. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. It was purple water with orange wax in
Oh
it.
wow! Yeah.
And I remember just sitting in front of it for about an hour, watching the wax go. Whoa. I've got to get one of these.
I mean, it's interesting actually how things like that can really really help. I mean,
I don't know that it's helpful particularly, but it was best evenings viewings I'd had for years.
I've actually got a keyring at home with like some glitter and things in it. I don't always take it around with me, but anything like that, it's amazing how something that's sort of so basic can really kind of sort of help, particularly if you've sort of been struggling. You've been quite sort of overstimulated or sort of whatever else.
I don't know that I find them helpful as such, but I find them very, very distracting.
Yes. Yeah.
They're distracting.
Yeah. I mean, they don't sort of necessarily kind of, obviously they don't solve the problem in the greater sense, but they certainly make you feel sort of better about things.
A little jar of glitter.
Yeah. But it's that's the thing though, isn't it?
It sounds absolutely ridiculous.
It does sound ridiculous, but it works.
But it works.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like lining things up.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I find this with people's book collections, or with people's, like, if people collect CDs or something. If I go around to their houses or something, and there's like like they've got sort of, I mean, I usually have a nosy at what they've got kind of thing. But if somebody were to say to me, look, okay, I've got a library, okay, it's thousands and thousands of volumes. I will pay you to put it in alphabetical order and basically keep an inventory of what I've got. I'd be like, yes, get in. It's like, you don't have to.
You can alphabetise my CD collection if you want.
It's like yeah,
It's only 10 of them.
Only 10 of them,
including Birdsong.
B for Birdsong. But it's curious because just the sort of feel of kind of having that kind of organisation on something, I think can be sort of very helpful, possibly because the world can seem quite sort of chaotic and difficult at times, particularly if you are feeling you sort of set off during the day feeling okay, and then like, to quote the book series of unfortunate events or whatever, and things don't go to plan, and or you just find yourself feeling tired and overstimulated or whatever. It's nice sometimes just to kind of have something you can fall back on. One or two friends over the years actually have brought me little kind of puzzly things that I can kind of keep in my bag, which can be quite good. They don't always work, admittedly, but if you kind of just sort of struggling a little bit, they are something you can kind of sort of fall back on.
Like fidget toys and things.
Yeah, fidgety toys and that sort of thing. I do tend to use them, when I'm out and about sometimes, depending on how I'm sort of feeling about things. I actually, not so long ago, actually got myself, one of those sunflower lanyard things with a little badge on saying about I am autistic, and it's quite interesting because that's the first time I've ever done something publicly in that sense. I mean, I've only ever worn it sort of 2 or 3 times, but it's the first kind of time I've ever actually in public kind of gone, here I am, here's my badge. It's
autistic coming through.
Yeah, autistic. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've only used it fairly sparingly, and I'm not sure how much notice people take of them anyway. But there we are. It's something. I think particularly during the sort of pandemic period, I think people started to sort of kind of cotton on a little bit more to these kinds of things, particularly if people were sort of struggling with changes in routine and that kind of stuff. One thing I have noticed, which is difficult for us, I think, is that when something goes wrong, like your routine gets changed or something like that, I tend to find things tend to escalate quite quickly. They do for me anyway. So you go from sort of 0 to 100 in a very short amount of kind of time.
Yeah.
So it's like sometimes you can feel a wave is coming on, like, oh God, this isn't good. I really need to kind of go and be by myself for a bit.
Yeah, and then you feel that it is happening, and you're being unreasonable, and that makes it worse.
Yeah, because you feel terrible.
And you know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and there's, in a sense, that there's almost a kind of sort of sense of kind of sort of self-recrimination about it as well, because you think to yourself, oh come on, this isn't my first rodeo, I know how this stuff works, why haven't I headed this off, I should have managed this better,
why am I behaving like this, even though I'm supposed to be a grown-up now.
Yeah, I mean, I during the lockdown I went into a Tesco and I bought myself I got myself a big box of Diet Coke. That's one of my weaknesses, and I was trying to find a sort of checkout to kind of go to, and the queues were really long and everything. I'm all masked up, obviously, and I tried to go to the sort of the self checkout, and then there was too many people there as well, and it wasn't clear where the end of the queue was. And then a bloke came past who was basically one of the sort of staff members and sort of said, "Oh no, the queue isn't here; it's over here," and it was like right at the other end of the thing, and that was it. And I was just sort of ranting and going, why didn't somebody, can't they put signs up? Well, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I remember kind of going home and thinking,
and you know what you sounded like.
Yeah, that person thinks I'm the biggest arsehole he's ever met, and in fairness, I would. Yeah, I didn't represent myself very well at all, and feeling really bad. But at the moment when it sort of happens, it's just out it comes, and yeah, I think it's easy to sort of feel, oh my God, I'm the worst person in the world. What have I just done? But it's going to happen sometimes, isn't it? And when it does, I guess you just have to sort of ride it out as best you can. But anything that you can kind of do to sort of help yourself in the meantime, if you feel things coming on, I think it's worthwhile, because certainly in my experience anyway, when these things do tend to happen, sometimes it can feel almost as though once it starts basically.
Yes.
Like an avalanche.
Yeah. You know it's happening, don't you?
Yeah. No, you very much do.
You know where we're going.
Yeah.
When that feeling takes hold.
Yeah. I mean, certainly for the people in the sort of temping job, that I mentioned, I think on the first video about me running out and going, oh, I need to get to a safe space. I mean, I was actually tempted for weeks afterwards to kind of go back to them and sort of go, I'm really sorry, and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, no, that would probably seem even weirder than not. So maybe I'm best off just moving on, chalk it up to experience or whatever. But yeah,
hope they forget.
Yeah, and just hope that they that they've got short memories. But there we are. That these things happen.
A lot of neurotypicals do have very short memories, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think
they live very much in the here and now.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think particularly if you're sort of in a fairly busy environment like a supermarket or like a work environment where there's people coming and going all the time, or both. You know, you may think that you've just embarrassed yourself as none have ever been embarrassed before, but you'd be surprised. I think probably a lot of people just think, oh well, you're in whatever kind of thing and take it in the stride. But I think because we tend to ruminate and think about these things, I think probably where the memory sort of works against us in a way, sort of recalling in detail, oh God, I did this and I did that. But in truth, I think, for the people outside, yes, they might be a bit shocked initially, but then once it's passed, they probably think, oh, well, so what, and get on with their lives.
And that ruminating on things, how much is that an autistic behaviour and how much is it a learned behaviour? I do wonder about, a lot of traits do seem to be more down to, anxiety and being told off a lot as a child and sort of always second-guessing yourself. I do. How much is that down to the makeup of the autistic mind, and how much of it is just psychology?
Yeah.
Growing up feeling a little bit different.
Yeah, and it's a very difficult question to answer, isn't it? Because there's obviously an interplay between the two things.
The anxiety levels and so proneness to depression and agoraphobia and the likes.
I mean, if you're constantly trying to sort of regulate what you say to people and how they sort of see you, then of course you're going to feel anxious about things because the sort of energy required to do that is enormous.
It is, yeah.
It's absolutely huge.
And when it's just a habit, and that you've been doing since you're a child, it's.
It's.
What is it?
It's almost like going, meeting people and things like that, and sort of every person that you meet, you kind of come away thinking, oh God, was I rude? Did I, did I respond as they wanted me to do? Did I laugh in the right places? Did I do? So if you have an entire room full of people, it's that times 10, 20, 30. So of course you're going to feel exhausted.
And even if you get to the point that, you don't care, or it's just inconsequential whether those people liked you or not, I mean, even that in itself is a sort of unusual personality trait, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, you don't give a stuff about anything, do you?
Yeah.
You don't care what anybody thinks about you. It's like there's a standard level of amount of caring what people think of you, and it's being autistic means you're far to the extremes. It's just the way that being autistic generally pushes you to the extremes of personality and response, doesn't it? It's like that with, it's the same with everything else, really, isn't it?
It's interesting also,
it's all part of the autistic condition.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I think in terms of the kind of extremes, I think that's actually something represented in popular culture as well, because quite often where you have these TV series where you'll have a character who is either autistic or coded autistic, they will quite often make quite a show of the fact that, they just kind of do their thing and they're not bothered, and you kind of think, well, okay, some people are like that, sure, but, there is actually a lot of thought that kind of goes into, I mean, I don't know about you, but, basically my kind of interactions with most things, I just want to kind of get them over with as simply as I can and with minimal flack. So, I don't particularly wish to kind of come across as sort of rude or whatever. But at the same time, if you kind of get me when I'm sort of struggling with other things, then that may happen. But certainly I think a lot of characters in sort of popular culture and things, I think if they are sort of coded as autistic or written as autistic or whatever, there is this sort of tendency to sort of portray them as, they're absolutely fine, they just freewheel the way through, they say all kinds of weird and wonderful things at work, and people kind of go, oh, ha, 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 that's just them being an old curmudgeonly so-and-so, don't we love them really,
Yeah, so they're so quirky.
They're so quirky, and how realistic that is, I don't know, probably not very, but, there you go, that's drama for you.
I'll tell you something I've noticed with autistic characters in fiction. they seem to manage to get to adulthood and have a sort of reasonable career and be able to drive a car and all this sort of thing. But nobody's ever told them, until they're sort of well into adulthood, that you need to say please and thank you.
Yeah.
And they've just been waiting for their new colleague who turns out to be a love interest to come along and tell them, oh, actually, when someone gives you something, you're supposed to say thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you leave a room, did you know?
Yeah.
You say goodbye.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yes, why is that, really?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I mean, the bridge especially was terrible for this.
Yeah, well, I was thinking...
God, I hated that.
Yeah,
I just had to watch every episode to see how awful it'd get.
Yeah, I must admit I didn't watch The Bridge, but I was aware of it at the time because there was quite a lot in the...
Yeah, it's worth watching just to see.
Yeah.
But it is.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah.
My partner watches Casualty in Holby City quite a lot, and I'm absolutely convinced that Dylan from Casualty is autistic. I mean, they've done stories about him having being an alcoholic in recovery. They've done a story about him having OCD, I think, but they've never done one about him having autism. And every time she has it on, I'm literally sitting there thinking, it's blatantly obvious. Come on, why don't they do something? And she'll go, oh well. They might do an episode about it eventually. He's been in for 10 years! Come on!
Yeah,
really?
I know that feeling. I mean, I've not actually watched Casualty. Not since, I used to watch it with me nan when I was a kid. But yeah, there's characters I'm sort of screaming at the screen shouting, get assessed! Get assessed!
I think that's the thing, isn't it?
Yes.
The tendency to want to kind of diagnose everybody you know, and particularly fictional characters.
I think fictional characters are fair game.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, real people and historical characters less so.
Although having said that, I mean, I think there are possibly one or two sort of historical characters actually who, even if you sort of do a fairly cursory glance at the Wikipedia page of them, which admittedly isn't in-depth research, but you do kind of think to yourself, I'd be surprised if they weren't.
Yeah, I've got to say, I was watching a documentary once about the life of Paul Dirac, the physicist.
Yes.
And they sort of went over a little character sketch and I thought, oh, right, it'd be a lot quicker just to say he was clearly autistic.
Yeah. Paul Dirac is a good example. Henry Cavendish is actually one who's mentioned a few times as well. A scientist. I mean,
Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci.
Yeah, but I mean, particularly these sort of characters. I always wonder about Andy Warhol, actually, to be honest.
Possibly.
Because, I mean, I know it's the kind of the repetition and things, but also, if you sort of see any interviews with him, I don't know, there's just something about him that kind of makes me think, I reckon very, very possibly, but... I mean, yeah, okay, it's a fruitless endeavour. You can't obviously go back and ask the dead, can you? But
no.
But I do think it is an interesting sort of thing to do. And
yeah, the A-dar.
Yeah, there's
A-dar.
Absolutely the good old A-dar or the A-dar as they call it.
Yes.
One of us. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I think in much the same way that you read stories about teenagers in the 1960s and 70s carrying sort of vinyl records under their arms and walking past each other and sort of checking each other out and thinking, oh wow, you're into the Stones, or oh wow, you're into Dylan, or whoever, and it's kind of almost like a kind of spotting people from the same thing. I think I think one of the things about becoming more kind of autism aware, as a result of your own thing, is you will start noticing things that other people do.
Yes.
And double points actually if it's just somebody you've just bumped into that you don't know well, and you find yourself thinking, I bet you are. I'll bet you are. I'll put money on you. And all this
it's often the accent that sort of gives it away for me.
Yes, indeed. The accent, the autism accent. There was a phrase you used in one of your videos. What was it? Adenoidal drone?
Yes, the adenoidal drone.
Adenoidal drone. Yes, I remember watching that and thinking, yeah, you've got it. You've nailed it there. I used to get a lot of stick at school actually for the way I talk.
For being posh.
Being allegedly posh.
Yes, for being posh.
Yeah, one of my teachers described me as having a BBC accent, whatever that means.
they used to talk on the BBC
Yeah, I mean,
in the 1950s.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's probably probably less relevant nowadays, I guess, because
Yes.
it's it's like a regional all the way, isn't it? But certainly back in the day, you can kind of sort of imagine that. But the curious thing is, I mean, I've actually been asked by people. I mean, I live in the north of England, but I've been asked actually by strangers sometimes in the place where I live, and they'll say, "Oh, you're not from round here, are you? Where are you from?" And it's as like it, providing I give some answer that's sufficiently southern, they'll be, "Oh, I'm from Oxford."
Yeah. No, I've had a lot of guesses of where I'm from, and it's always sort of within about 50 miles of where I am from. But
it's interesting.
It's never quite round here.
I've only ever had one person who didn't know where I was originally from who successfully guessed it on the basis of the accent. Yeah,
I wouldn't have guessed.
No,
you sound nothing at all like my dad.
No.
He's from this tiny little place.
Yeah.
That my dad is also from, by sheer coincidence.
Yeah. It's a strange thing, but literally in all the people who've ever guessed, there's only one person who's ever got it right.
You're from Harle Syke.
So, yeah, I guess the sort of was it the adenoidal drone or whatever sort of gets in the gets in the way.
Mm. But I'm going to have to pop it off again because it's past 31 minutes.
Yep.
Right, that's the end of part 3.
Mm-hmm.
There may be a part 4. I'm not sure. We'll have a talk about it and see if we've got anything else to say for now. But yeah, maybe see you in a bit.